Learning the names of the notes on the fretboard of the guitar can be one of the most freeing and liberating things you can do for your playing. Unfortunately, it can also be one of the most boring things to practice. Hey, I'm Nate Savage and welcome back to this lesson for Guitar Foundations, where we're going to take a look at the names of the notes on the low E string and how to memorize them, commit them to memory so you can move your power chords and eventually your bar chords around the guitar a lot easier. Before we get into it, make sure to head over to natesavage.com to check out the Guitar Foundations book or sign up for a private lesson if you need help with anything we've covered so far. So I didn't take this seriously, not really, until one day I was at a Joe Satriani guitar camp, and he said, the first thing he said with one of his sessions was, if you don't know all of the names of the notes on the fretboard cold, you're kidding yourself. Ever since then, I took it seriously and I came back home and, I had the notes on the E and A strings memorized and the high E string too, but the B, G, and D strings, they're still a little bit of a mystery. So I came home and just started really hammering those in to where I knew them really well. And I'm going to show you and give you some tips that I used to memorize those notes really well. I'll show you how to do that for the low E string. Now, the cool thing about this is once you know the names of the notes on the low E, you also know the names of the notes on the high E, which means you already have a third of the guitar memorized, which is awesome. You get to double dip. So the ball will get rolling really quickly here. The first thing you need to know, and you probably already know this, but I want to kind of make this a self-contained video, is just the natural musical alphabet. In order to find any note on any string on the guitar, you have to know that the natural musical alphabet is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, just like the first 7 letters of the regular alphabet. It also helps a lot to be able to say that backwards, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. You'll see why in a little bit, but just work on that A, B, C, D, F, G, and then backwards to G, F, E, D, C, B, A. Our goal for this lesson, or at least our first one, is to memorize the names of the natural notes on the low E. We'll get into the sharps and flats later too, but take a look at this graphic real quick. It has all the notes on the low E string, and this can be kind of intimidating. There's a lot of information there. So just don't think about the sharp and flat notes now. Just worry about the natural notes. And the best way to do this is to cut something down like that. We just took out the sharps and flats, but just go through and say the names of the notes on the strings out loud. This is a really key thing here. Say the note names out loud as you look at the diagram, and then just go fret by fret. So the open E, and the first fret is an F, then the third fret is a G natural. And don't worry about exactly how these frets are called, these names right now. We'll get into that more later. For now, just say the note names out loud and look at your graphic and keep traveling up the neck with me. 5th fret is an A, 7th fret is a B, 8th fret is a C, 10th fret is a D. Just going in alphabetical order here with just the natural notes. So 10th fret is a D. And then once you get to the 12th fret, that's our octave, we're back to E. Now, that's step number 1. The next thing you can do is go back down the opposite direction because it forces your brain to recall this in a different way, which is going to help you memorize it faster. So E, and this is why I wanted you to be able to say the natural musical alphabet backwards. E, D, C on the 8th fret, B on the 7th fret, A on the 5th fret, G on the 3rd fret, F, 1st fret, and then back to the E open string. Now, the main reason for working on this, especially when you're starting out with a guitar, is to be able to move your power chords around to any location and know exactly where they are. Power chords and bar chords, we'll get more to bar chords later, but for now, it's for your power chords. So you can do that exercise that we just did, forwards and backwards, just using the natural notes, but you can also play your power chords up and down the fretboard to give it some context. And the more songs you learn, the more solid your memorization of these notes will get too. So E, 1st fret, index finger F, G, 3rd fret, 5th fret, A, 7th fret with your index finger is a B, 8th fret is a C, D, 10th fret, and then back to an octave E on the high E string. And this may be overwhelming right now. Don't worry about it. Just plow through it and force yourself to do it. 3 to 5 minutes a day, just worrying about the notes on the low E string maybe as a warm-up, and we'll get to warm-ups later as well. But just incorporating that little amount will really help this to start to snowball and see some really good results. So E, 10th fret is a D, 8th fret is a C, B is on the 7th fret, A is the 5th fret, G, 3rd fret, first fret, F, and then back to the open E. If that's pretty easy for you, I have kind of a level 2 exercise to help drill this into your brain and sear it in there even more. All you do is play leapfrog. And by that all I mean is you play the first open low E string, and then instead of going to right to the next note, you go to the G note, skip one. And then you go back one natural note to the F, and then skip one again to A, and then go back to G, skip all the way up to B, back to A, skip B and go to C, back to B, skip C and go to D, back to C, skip D and go to E. And this is forcing your brain to recall this information in a different way. It's going to let you know how well you really know the names of the notes on the low E string, at least the natural notes for now. So you can do that ascending and descending. So if you have E, you can go C, then up to D, B, C, A, B, G. And don't forget to say the note names out loud. That's a really big connector. A, F, G, E. And you can do the same exact thing with your power chords too. So you can try the E, G, F, A, G, B, A, C, B, D, C, E, D. And it just continues up the fretboard from there too. If you want to keep going, if you have electric guitar, we can go up higher. That's fine. You can go F, E, then G. I can't reach. So that's the first kind of all-encompassing goal for this video, is to use those exercises to get the natural notes on the low E string down. Now, if you're comfortable with that, and it may take a day, it may take a couple weeks, it really depends how much time you put into it, you can move on to throwing in the sharp and flat notes on the low E string. And there's a couple things we need to talk about to make it easy for you to find any note, sharp, flat, or natural, on any string on the guitar. The first one is just the idea of a note being sharp or flat. And to do that, let's just go through an example. Pick any note, any natural note on the low E string. Let's do a G, just because it's an easy example here, 3rd fret. If you raise any natural note by 1/2 step, you can end up with a sharp note with that same name. So if you have this G on the 3rd fret, and you raise it by 1 fret, you can call that a G sharp, okay? Now, kind of the opposite of that would be if you have any natural note that you're starting with and you lower by 1/2 step, you can call that a flat note by the same name. So moving a G down by 1/2 step or 1 fret would move to a G flat here on the 2nd fret. Now you may be thinking to yourself, if you're looking at the diagram of all the notes on the low E string, well, Nate, that 2nd fret is also called an F sharp. What's up with that? That's ridiculous. And yeah, it's ridiculous, but that's just the way music works. Some notes can be called by 2 different names, and that comes down to which key you're in as to which note name you call that by. But just accept it for what it is right now. This note here on the 2nd fret can be either an F sharp or a G flat. Okay, next little bit of information is just the difference between a whole step and a 1/2 step. And this is nothing new for you if you've been following along here, but we'll go over it anyways. Whole step on the guitar for right now is just 2 frets. So if you start off on this G on the 3rd fret, skip the 4th fret and go right to the 5th fret. So 3 to 5, or in this case, G to A. A 1/2 step would be just 1 fret. So from a G to a G sharp, or an A flat. All right, the last little tidbit of information you need to know is just the B, C, and E, F rule. And follow me here, it's a little bit thick, but you can get it. This rule states that any 2 adjacent natural notes in the natural musical alphabet have a whole step between them, except for B and C and E and F. Let me say that again. The B, C, and E, F rule states that any 2 adjacent natural notes in the natural musical alphabet have a whole step between them, except for B and C and E and F. That means if you pick any note but B and C and E and F and go right to the next note, up or down, then you will have a whole step between those 2 notes. And let's go back to our G note for an example. That's a natural note. So if we go a whole step, we're going to get to the next natural note in the natural musical alphabet. And if you have A, B, C, D, F, G, you'll just go back around to the beginning to the A. So from a G, you have a whole step to an A. Let's do this again. If you have an A, what's right next to an A if you go in order? A to a B, right? It's not an E and F. or a B and C, those two pairs of notes. So from A to B would be a whole step 2, because the B, C, and E, F rule states that any two adjacent natural notes, except for B and C and E and F, have a whole step between them. So A and B have a whole step between them. Now we're getting to where the B, C, and E, F rule really kick in. The B note right here that we just landed on, 7th fret, it's a B. The next adjacent natural note is a C. B, C, E, F rule says that there's only going to be a half step between B and C. And same thing, if you have the open E, what's the next adjacent natural note, right? It's an F. So we're only going to have a half step or 1 fret between them. That's just something you need to keep in mind as you work on learning the notes on this string, especially since we're throwing in sharps and flats now. And the way you work on this is the exact same way. So take the same ideas, go up the fretboard, just naming every note, and then back down as well. Then you can do the whole leapfrog thing as well too. All right, let's try that right now. Let's start with the open E. Remember, there's only a half step between E and F. So the first fret is just an F. Then you have what would be, the next note up would be an F sharp or G flat. It could go by either name. And when you have a note that can be called by 2 different names, it's called an enharmonic note. So if you hear that term being thrown around, you'll know what it means. That can be an F sharp or G flat, enharmonic. Next fret up, G. Next fret up, a G sharp or an A flat. 5th fret is an A. Next is an A sharp or B flat. 7th fret is a B. Okay, we're on a B, so our rule says that the next fret, 1/2 step away, will be a C, because there's only a half step between B and C. Okay, from C, next fret is a C sharp, and that'll be the 9th fret, or D flat, you could call that. And next fret up, 10th fret is a D, 11th fret is an E flat or a D sharp, and then all the way up to an E. And you can go back down backwards to E, D sharp, E flat, D, C sharp or D flat, C, 1/2 step to a B natural. Next note is a B flat or A sharp, A, G sharp or A flat, G, G flat or F sharp, F, and finally back to an E. So do that for a while. You can even use your power chords with this to make it a little more interesting for you. Just moving around the fretboard, being really conscious of what actual power chord you're playing by where your index finger is laying. That's another really good thing to do. Pick a random fret on the guitar with the power chord and say, okay, what am I playing? Okay, that looks like B flat. Cool, 6th fret, B flat. Once you're feeling comfortable with that, after a few days, few weeks, then you can start doing the whole leapfrog thing. So E, F sharp, F, G, F sharp or G flat, to G sharp or A flat, G, A flat or G sharp, B flat, A sharp. You get the idea. I won't put you through I won't put you through the pain of making you watch me do that, because you're gonna have to do it yourself. It's not gonna be the most fun in the world, but it's gonna be really cool, because when you start to learn new songs and they have a lot of power chords in them or a lot of bar chords, you're gonna be able to go right to it and be like, oh, that's a B flat. There's a C. Where's an E? It's right there, F sharp. So here are your assignments for this lesson. Again, it's not going to be the most fun thing in the world to practice. You're going to have to use some discipline to make yourself do this. But trust me, 27-something years of playing the guitar, this is really important. It'll make your life a lot easier in the long run. Here they are. Number 1, memorize the natural musical alphabet. Number 2, understand the difference between whole steps and half steps. Number 3, memorize and understand the B, C, and E, F rule. Number 4, memorize the natural notes on the low E string, and you can use all the exercises we went through to kind of get that down. Number 5, memorize the sharp and flat notes on the low E string. And number 6, move the power chord shape up and down the fretboard on the E string as much as possible to really make these note locations sink in. That may sound like a lot to do every day, but you don't have to do all of these in one day or all of these every day. You can start out with the first 3. Those are pretty easy. After a couple days, once you have those down and understand them, just incorporate number 4, just the natural notes at the beginning of each practice session for a while, for just 3 or 5 minutes. And then once you feel good with that, add the 5th one for a week or 2, and then finally the last one. Now, if you have any questions on this stuff, you can either comment below and I'll get back to you there, or you can email me directly at nate@natesavage.com. You can also head over to natesavage.com to sign up for email notifications so you can stay on top of all the new videos that are being released. Now, if you're having really serious trouble with any of these individual areas, you can always go to natesavage.com and schedule a private lesson with me. The first one is complimentary, so there's no risk. And I will see you in the next lesson. We're going to learn your first song.